In one of the most insane stories of the year so far, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Liberal government is actually defending an element of their new Online Harms Act, Bill C-63, that would have Canadians placed under house arrest in a peace bond because they might commit a hate-based offense. A hate-based offense being something the Liberals still haven't even clearly defined, in which it's so abstract you could basically go to prison for saying something discriminatory. And now you can be placed under house arrest for potentially saying something discriminatory. Not that you might have actually said it and they're placing you under house arrest until they determine that. No. You haven't even said anything wrong yet, according to the Liberals, but you could say something wrong. And so the Justice Minister now, Arif Verani, is defending this as something that will help de-radicalize people. Yeah, it's preposterous. It is absolutely authoritarian and insane, but these people are so delusional. They're so in their own bubble. They believe that doing this is going to cause good. And make no mistake, yes, the Liberals are authoritarians. Yes, they are professional clowns. At the same time, they don't understand that they're clownish wannabe dictators. They are people who actually think that they are doing good in the world. That's what makes them so dangerous. Bad people who know they're doing bad things are easy to expose because they don't tend to be very careful at hiding it. These guys actually think that what they're doing is helping people, that basically crushing people with a government boot might save their lives. This is why these people are dangerous. They are true believers in their nonsense. They're not just opportunists. They are using the opportunities they have, but they genuinely believe that they're going to somehow crack down on hate. But I just want to get to this Globe and Mail article now where Arif Verani was responding to the criticism of Bill C-63. The media is actually going after them because even they think this is insane. And when confronted about this peace bond element of 63, he says that they are carefully calibrating this element of it to make sure that it doesn't get abused, but so that it helps de-radicalize people. Because obviously there's ways of not abusing a power, of locking people up for crimes they haven't committed, a crime that isn't even a real crime. It's just a stupid thought crime that the Liberals believe should be punishable with prison time, fines, and other sorts of things. And when he was confronted about this by the media, he said that on why this restriction was needed and why they should also be able to ban certain people from using the internet or social media. He says that would help to de-radicalize people who are learning things online and acting out in the real world violently, sometimes fatally. If people are acting out in the real world violently or fatally, you should be arresting them for the violence they're committing. He's being a weasel here and pretending like he can just sort of throw out the words violently and fatally in order to justify locking someone up for potentially saying something wrong in real life. It's not something wrong being a vague term that the Liberals have meant have taken to mean anything from calling for genocide, which is obviously already illegal, all the way to saying something discriminatory. And because they can tie that vaguely to the idea that you might act out violently or fatally, they're allowed to lock you up in your home. I want to move on to this. And he said when he was people are asking about the striking a balance between free speech and combating hate, because even the media in criticizing this bill still has to give credence to the idea of hate crimes. He says there's a lot of bad stuff out there, but this is not about the bad stuff. This is about something much higher. Well, why is the bill going after discriminatory behavior? Because if discriminatory behavior, like they've said in the bill, is a part of that much higher stuff, that scares me a little bit. Because what does he define as just generically bad stuff? Because he has not left a lot of room between normal speech of just saying hi to your friend and saying something discriminatory. There's not that much between there. If you misgender someone, this bill could put you in prison because you're trying to mentally harm people. That is where this bill is obviously going for. And you could say, well, there's nothing in the bill that specifically says they're doing that. Well, then why don't they define their terms closer? It's so they can move towards ridiculous nonsense and trying to criminalize it. Moving on to something else he said. He said, what's really critical is that it gives the judge a wonderful range of sentences. Imagine using the word wonderful in regards to this bill. Sorry, moving on. He said, this is not a mandatory minimum of life sentence. This is just a larger range, including what would be the maximum sentence. And in that case, there is a maximum sentence of potentially life in prison, 25 years until parole, if you say certain things under Bill C-63, the Online Harms Act. Yes, they said, well, it's for people who are calling for genocide or whatever. Even then, I don't think that's exactly something you can put a life sentence on. Well, calling for genocide is a violent call to action. That is not protected free speech because you are actively saying, go kill these people. That's how you end up putting mob bosses behind bars, because you're not allowed to order other people to kill people. And calling for genocide would do that. But, like, this is already a crime, so why are we instituting maximum sentences for things that already have harsh sentences if we are not trying to weasel our way into applying those extremely harsh sentences to people who did something far short of calling for violence on other people? Anyways, moving on, I think there's another quote here I remember that's completely ridiculous. Uh, Oh yeah. This is actually a very good point that the Globe and Mail makes, which is funny because the Globe and Mail is not usually good at making good points. They said, Mr. Verani said, as Justice Minister, he is sworn to uphold the Constitution, which includes freedom of expression. Quote, of course, I'm concerned about the chilling of freedom of expression. I heard those concerns to a great extent, and yet you didn't really open your ears enough to take them seriously. So now we have a bill that could put people behind bars or put them under house arrest for discriminatory language because those words might lead to actions. Anything might lead to actions. This is just Minority Report type pre-crime. If anything can be tied to a potential action, I can basically put someone behind bars for anything. This is exactly the sort of mentality, the worldview behind that quote from that Soviet, I think it was Cheka at the time, not quite the KGB, but the head of the Cheka in the Soviet Union, Lavrentiy Beria, when he said, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. This is exactly it. Do you think you can't find someone who hasn't said something offensive that the liberals would claim could lead to violence? They've claimed things that the conservative opposition has said could lead to violence. That was just reporting on Liberal Party corruption. Do you think that they're not going to try and define going after corruption as being discriminatory or hateful based on some arbitrary elements of the criticism? They will do that because these people are clowns. And Mr. Verani said, time is of the essence, and we know how horrible material can go on very, very quickly. Well, I'm just going to let Verani know there's no current genocide taking place because of online activity. There's no mass spate of violence in Canada because of online activity. Yes, and if anything, a lot of the misinformation that is quite dangerous is coming from left-wing elements. Look at all the communists and Islamists going around harassing Jewish people in major cities and spreading lies about a fake genocide taking place in Gaza, which is really just the Israeli military fighting Hamas, in which there has really not been that many casualties overall for something that's apparently a genocide. These people are the ones actually spreading around hate, and this is why, like CJA, it's a Jewish advocacy organization in Canada, usually goes after anti-Semitism. These people are complete fools. They are backing this bill, might be because they get money from the liberal governments and they're cowards, but they're backing this bill because they think it will somehow fight anti-Semitism. Guys, wake up. One, that's not a justification for taking away free speech, is that you might be able to suppress some hatred out there. Passing government policy never suppresses real hatred. This is why Barry Goldwater in the United States didn't vote for the Civil Rights Act. He was on board for any piece of legislation that would cut down on government racial discrimination and government enforced segregation. He voted against it because it was also going to say that you cannot discriminate in your private business. His point behind that is that could be weaponized later on against private businesses for discrimination, no one you disagree with, that you discriminate someone against someone because you don't like their ideas and whatnot, you don't want them participating in your business, and that the legislation was written so badly that it's basically that you have to serve everybody, and you're like, as long as they're willing to pay, you have to serve them. And his other reason for opposing it was that it doesn't actually cut down on hatred to try and criminalize hatred. It just puts it under the surface. If anything, it actually lets people get away with, hatefulness, bigotry, racism, all this stuff, because they can say, well, I'm not abandoning my racist views. The government's just forcing me to operate in such a way. Where Barry Goldwater, who is very libertarian in his views, were saying that you should have to suffer the public consequences of being an awful person, that people find out about it and they don't want to go to your business. If you have to follow government mandates, you get to hold on to your beliefs and think it's like, well, I'm just desegregating my business because the government forced me to. That's his problem with it, and that's where CJ is not understanding. Bill C-63 is not actually going to target anti-Semitism at all. For one thing, the Liberals don't care about anti-Semitism. They haven't done anything against it yet. This is not going to target anti-Semites. And then two, even if it did, you're not actually getting rid of anti-Semitism. You're just putting a cover over it and pretending it's not there. You got to actually advocate against the crazies who push for stuff like that, just as the left, if there's actual racists out there, show what they said was racist and argue against it. They don't want to do that because there's really not that much racism out there, so they want government policy passed in order to expand the definition of what racism is so that they can go after it with the legal system and attack the people that they do not like. I'm going down a bit of a rabbit hole here, but you understand where this stupid line of thinking that the Liberals are pushing can lead to. Yes, are they going to lock up people right away as soon as this bill is passed? If it gets passed, probably not. But I don't think that these people are responsible enough that in a few years, they're not locking up people for telling jokes at comedy bars or locking up pastors for being, like transphobic or something like that. These people do not have the capacity to make this law work, and I don't think that we should be passing anything curbing free speech outside of obvious instances of like calling for violence, in which that's not just giving your opinion, that's trying to get people to commit a violent, illegal action. Anyways, please make sure that every MP that you is in your area is going to vote against Bill C-63. If you live in an area with an NDP or Liberal MP, definitely put pressure on them that not even if you're a conservative, that you will make sure to campaign for the conservative against them in their area, so that while, yes, they might not get your vote in the next election, if they do not vote against this, you will work as hard as possible to make sure that they never get reelected. Make sure that you put the pressure on these people, because this bill could truly destroy free speech in Canada. And then anyways, other than that, I also just want to mention the fact that I, Wyatt Claypool, am running for the Calgary Signal Hill Conservative Party nomination. If you live in this riding, please buy a Conservative Party membership and vote for me. Go check out my website in the description below, WyattClaypool.com. Anyone who, I know there's at least a couple hundred people who watch me from that area every time I upload a video. I see the city statistics, so there's usually 2,500 people from Calgary. So make sure you still check if you live in this riding. This is what the new boundaries look like. Buy membership, please. And then also, I have the Give, Send, Go running for myself and the National Telegraph's legal fund. We have this ridiculous defamation suit being lodged against us from a rich developer. It's been going on for 2 years. We paid $25,000 defending ourselves. We did nothing wrong. He can't prove we said anything wrong. And our guest writer's article, which mentioned this developer guy, basically only relied purely on a Globe and Mail article that was already a year and a half old, and we said nothing new about him other than the fact that he was making massive donations to Aaron O'Toole's leadership campaign. Anyways, finally, that should be it for me today. Sorry for the rambling. I'll see you guys all later.